Book 9 of the Nicomachean Ethics. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jeffrey Edwards. The Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle. Translated by Thomas Taylor. Book 9. Chapter 1. In all friendships, however, which are of a dissimilar species, the analogous, as we have already observed, equalizes and preserves friendship. Thus, for instance, in the political friendship, to the shoemaker a retribution is made for his shoes, according to their worth, and to the weaver, and other artificers. Here, therefore, a common measure, money, is employed, and to this every thing is referred, and by this is measured. But in the amatory friendship, sometimes indeed the lover accuses the object of his love, that though he loves her beyond measure, he is not beloved in return, though, if it should so happen, he has nothing which can excite love. Frequently, however, she who is beloved complains that her lover, having formerly promised every thing, now performs nothing that he had promised. But things of this kind happen, when the one indeed loves the object of his love on account of pleasure, but the other loves her lover on account of utility. And these things are not present with both. For since the friendship exists on account of these things, a dissolution of it takes place when those things are not accomplished which are the final causes of their love. For they do not love each other, but what each possesses, which is not stable. Hence, such also are their friendships, viz. They are not stable. The friendship, however, which is founded in manners, i.e. virtuous friendship, since it exists per se, or independent of external circumstances, is permanent, as we have before observed. But friends also disagree when other things happen to them, and not those which were the objects of their desire. For when a man does not obtain that which he desired, it is just as if he obtained nothing. Thus a certain person promised a harper that he would reward him in proportion to the excellence of his singing. But in the morning, when the harper demanded the fulfilment of his promise, he said that he had returned pleasure for pleasure. If, therefore, this, i.e. pleasure, had been the wish of each, the harper would have been sufficiently recompensed. But if the object of the one was delight, and of the other gain, and if the object of the one was accomplished, but not of the other, the compact between them was not well fulfilled. For a man will attend to those things of which he is in want, and for the sake of them will give what is requisite. With respect, however, to the recompense which ought to be made, whether ought it to be estimated by him who gives, or by him who receives? For he who gives first seems to leave to the receiver what the recompense should be, which they say Protagoras also did. For when he had taught any thing, he ordered the learned to estimate what appeared to him to be the worth of the knowledge he had gained, and he received according to his valuation. But in things of this kind, to some persons it is sufficient to say, Sufficient be the price a friend appoints. Those, however, who having first received money, afterwards perform nothing which they had promised to do, on account of the excessive magnitude of their promise, are deservedly accused, for they do not perform what they had agreed to accomplish. But the sophists perhaps are compelled to do this, because no one would give money for those things which they know. These, therefore, because they do not perform that for which they received a reward, are justly blamed. With those persons, however, among whom there is no compact for services performed, we have already observed that those who first give to others on their own account are not to be blamed. For of this kind is the friendship which is founded in virtue. Retribution, also, must be made according to deliberate choice ; for this is the province of a friend, and of virtue. This conduct, likewise, as it seems, should be adopted by those who are associates in philosophy. For the worth of philosophy is not to be measured by money, nor can any honour be conferred equivalent to its dignity. But perhaps it is sufficient that a recompense as great as possible is made, in the same manner as towards the gods and parents. Where, however, the gift is not such as this, but is conferred with a view to a certain thing, [i. e. with a view to some recompense,] a remuneration perhaps ought especially to be made, which to both friends will appear to be according to desert. But if this should not happen to take place, it may not only appear to be necessary, but also to be just, that he who first received should determine what is an equal compensation. For if as much advantage or pleasure is returned as was received, the remuneration will be according to desert. For this also appears to take place in traffic ; and in some places there are laws which forbid any judicial processes respecting voluntary contracts, as if it were fit that in communions of this kind there should be no other judge, nor any other law, but that all differences should be decided by the person in whom trust is reposed, and by whom such contracts are used. For they think that he who was instructed to estimate the retribution will judge more justly than he who reposed that trust ; since for the most part those who possess, and those who wish to receive any thing, do not estimate equitably. For every one thinks that his own property and what he gives are of great value. At the same time, however, the retribution should be as great as it is determined to be by those who receive the gift. Perhaps, however, a thing is not to be estimated to be worth so much as it appeared to its possessor, but to be worth as much as he would have estimated it to be before he possessed it. CHAPTER 2. Such particulars, however, as the following, are dubious, viz. Whether all things are to be assigned to a father, and he is to be obeyed in all things ; or whether the sick man ought indeed to obey the physician, and he who votes for the general of an army ought to give the preference to a man skilled in warlike concerns. And in a similar manner, whether it is proper to be subservient to a friend rather than to a worthy man, and whether remuneration is rather to be made to a benefactor than to an associate, if it is impossible to make it to both. It is not, therefore, easy to determine all such particulars accurately ; for they have many and all various differences in magnitude and parvitude, in the beautiful and the necessary. But it is not immanifest that not all things are to be given to the same person, and that for the most part benefits are rather to be returned to those from whom they were received, than gifts are to be bestowed on associates ; just as it is more proper to return a loan to him from whom it was borrowed, than to make a present to an associate. Perhaps, however, this must not always be done ; for if any one should be made a prisoner by robbers, it may be inquired whether he who redeems him should be redeemed in his turn, be he who he may ; or whether the price of redemption should be given to him who demands it as his due, though he has not been taken prisoner ; or whether, in preference to all these, a father ought to be redeemed. For it would seem that a man should rather ransom his father than himself. Universally, therefore, as we have said, a debt ought to be paid ; but if the donation surpasses in the beautiful or the necessary, we should incline to it, rather than to the discharge of a debt. For sometimes it is not equitable to return a benefit which another person has first conferred, when he indeed conferred the benefit knowing that it was bestowed on a worthy man. But the retribution will be made to one whom he who is to make it believes to be a depraved man. For neither sometimes is a loan to be granted to him who has lent. For the one indeed, [i. e. the depraved man,] thinking that he shall receive back what he has lent, grants a loan to the worthy man ; but the other,